tip for context, Hector: never ask designers what the strangest brief they've ever got on as a question, because every time we ask the question, they just duck the question, saying, "No, we can't talk about that." So it's just
Yes.
a life lesson we've learned. We thought we'd do this cool idea where they get everyone to talk about wacky briefs that land on their desk or something, but every single time we've asked the question, they've all said, "Yeah, we can't talk to you about that." So we're trying to find a new quirky question to
That's
to
fair.
finish
That's
things
fair.
off. There's a few things I wanted us to kind of run through, really. Hector, it was thanks for obviously wanting to kind of come on and join us. It feels quite apt, really, because over here in the UK, um, we're I don't know if they've announced it yet, but they're about to. But they're about to announce some quite drastic education cuts to art and design education, which is, I think, more implied to like primary schools and secondary schools, that kind of level of education. So not so pre-university, right? But that's where you fall in love with the craft, I guess. So I just thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring someone like yourself on, who is kind of knocking on the door of design education and doing things a little bit differently, just to kind of get a bit more of a feel for your background and story so far, and obviously invite you on here as much as you kindly invited us on to Context all those months ago. I don't know if you've been on many podcasts. How does it feel to be the guest for a change and not the person asking the questions?
Yeah, I appreciate it. There's definitely less pressure
Yeah,
to, you know, be the moderator and kind of, work prior the week to really strategize and build the narrative. So yeah, I was
yeah.
coming in and I was like, oh, I don't have to do anything this time.
I did shave today for you coming on, so it must have been quite important for me to go and do that. So, obviously, again, thanks for coming on. I'm going to guess that the people that are listening are probably going to know a little bit about advanced design and yourself and what you're about. Mainly just based on the amount of listener questions that I got through over the last couple of days, which is a lot more than some of the other guests we've had on from pretty big companies. So you're doing something right in that regard. Lots of people wanted to ask some questions. But to those that don't know, it'd be just great if you could just give the 30-second elevator pitch to you and the organization and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure, yeah, no problem. My name is Hector Silva, and I'm a design educator in the United States, based in Chicago. And I started Advanced Design, which is a design nonprofit, and the purpose of the program or the nonprofit was to shake up design education, make it accessible, make it a level playing field, because right now education is pretty elitist. You either need a lot of money or have a lot of money to attend the school and be part of this very exclusive club, or you have to borrow money to go there. And if you borrow money, when you graduate, it can disrupt your growth as a designer or as a human because of debt, especially here in the United States. So the purpose of Advanced Design was to offer education free at no cost, whatever means that means, and at least make it accessible with social media and all these wonderful platforms that we now have access to.
Yeah, brilliant. So what we'll do, Hector, is we'll put the links in our descriptions of how people can take a look or donate or something like that. That's something I've done in the past, but we'll put all the relevant links in so people can Google at their heart's content and kind of look at things in a bit more kind of depth. I've got loads of questions, and I'm sure Drew has too. But I thought the best place would be to start right at the beginning, and like before all of this stuff happened. Was there a what was your design career like? It was actually really enough a listener question from a chap called Nadeem that was asking, why did you get into design education in the first place? You kind of touched upon it there, but I presume that wasn't the intention day one out of university, was to teach. I imagine you originally had other goals in industry.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I graduated about 12 years ago. I'm going to date myself. And I graduated uh, a year, no, it probably 6 months right after the economic crash of
Yeah.
2008. And that period of time really, um, it got me very shaken up as a person, because I quickly realized that there's no such thing as, oh, it's the perfect job market, right? Everyone's going to go into the job market, and anything could be happening. There could be war, there could be recessions, like, and so I was very traumatized by that time. And when I was in school, I wanted to be a toy designer. So I started going into toy design. So the first 2 years out of school, I worked for Nickelodeon. I worked for some toy invention firms here in Chicago. Chicago is known for being one of the toy invention capitals of at least here in the United States, where you work with engineers, electrical engineers, and you create concepts. Think about it like Shark Tank, where you invent new toys, you invent new characters, new concepts, and then you pitch those ideas to the bigger companies like Fisher Price and Mattel.
Yeah.
Um, and then that's how these invention firms stay in business. They get royalties from big hits like Tickle Me Elmo and other, giant toys that make it. So I was doing that for 2 to 3 years, and it was going great. I really loved it, and also did work for, I did industrial design work for Crate and Barrel. I did work for some local design studios here in Chicago. Um, and then I started to realize that there has to be more to this than just me chasing and me going to work 9 to 5. And I think I was getting a little exhausted. Um, and I started to think like, okay, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life, for the next
I'm sure
200?
I'm sure we've all been there.
Yeah.
How old were you then?
I was like 23, 24 when I started to
And
ask
already,
these questions. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that's real. I mean, that must be really, really common, because I think around that sort of quarter life crisis, we all think, oh man, I've been studying this one thing for maybe 5 years by that point.
Mm-hmm.
You get your first taste of it, you're like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and honestly, around this time, industrial design was really small, and small in the sense that you had to be really good at like 3 or 4 things for you to be pretty successful industrial designer. Like you had to be really good at prototyping, CAD, and sketching. It was very traditional. This was before social media, before Uber, before any of these companies really existed, Airbnb. Like students didn't have Kickstarters in their portfolios. Like none of this, students didn't do video, and they didn't do CAD animations and Keyshot. Like none of this existed. So you had to be really good at these very 4 or 5 very specific things, and then, you were able to be pretty adequate at work. So I started asking these questions like, okay, for the last 3 years, I've been hustling and been working my butt off. Like, is this it? Is this what I went to school for? And I have debt, like I was, there's a lot of pressure, and I was just like a little frustrated, started asking these questions. There has to be more out there, but I want to be in design, but there has to be more. So started talking to people, started talking to my older brother, who's an educator, and started to realize that maybe my calling was in education, and going back to help kind of mold and at least influence the next generation of designers.
So Hector, it's interesting you say that you got to that stage and started thinking, well, hang on, what can I do that's kind of related to this, but maybe something parallel. I always think that's an interesting topic, especially in design. It's interesting to me because that's what I do. But there are lots of people who don't get that first opportunity, and they come out of uni and they've got this degree and they've got all this training, and eventually they start having to go, well, what am I going to do with all this? Education's really a great option for anybody. I remember getting to a similar point, and I was like maybe 2 or 3 jobs in. It wasn't, they were not good jobs, and they were not interesting, and I wasn't sketching or prototyping. I was just doing AutoCAD, and I just thought, well, you know what, if this is the work that's available to me and this is the portfolio that I've got, why not go back and study architecture so I can get, the better role where I'm doing, because I was doing a lot of sort of structural steel work and that type of thing. I guess probably a lot of people have those kind of crisis moments at that point and go, I've got to do something different, or I've really got to knuckle down. It's interesting that you went, okay, I'm going to go into education.
Yeah, I think also, like, I also did all the shitty jobs. I did the jobs that are advertised in a very shady website. I did other jobs because I thought maybe I'm frustrated because maybe I want more money. So therefore, let me go make more money, and maybe that's gonna, make me happier because I get to buy things or travel. But that's only temporary, right? Those are only temporary goals. Those are things that make you happy on a very, like, I'm thinking long term. And I, like, honestly, like, it's really weird as well. I even joined the pyramid scheme for like a year. And I was a part of some really weird cultish business groups that were doing really weird stuff because I wanted something different. I wanted to change my whole schedule without leaving design, right?
And it's crazy to think that by such a young age, like, the expectation is that you've decided what you want to do for the rest of your career, and that's it. No, just get on with it. Like 16, or I don't know what it's like in the States, but like 15, 16, you're choosing your first round of exams that lead on to another round of exams that lead on to a degree that lead on to, first job. Like, not many people know what they want to do. I was pretty set by that point because I was locked in.
As a designer.
I was locked in. I wanted to draw lamps and bins and all sorts of things like that, and chairs. I haven't actually had the opportunity to design any of those things. But yeah, like, it's crazy to think a 25-year-old person to go, right, off you go. This is it now for the rest of it. You got another 50 years of work.
Well, I mean, it's crazy to think that there's people and families who already kind of foretell their kids, like, oh, you're going to be a doctor, an engineer. If your background is like, a lot of my friends who are Indian or Asian or, from South America or different parts of the world, their parents have this like long line of legacy, like, oh, we're doctors, therefore you're going to go into medicine, or you're going to be an engineer, or you're going to be an architect. And I mean, imagine that, like, you're 16 years old and you're like, well, I already got to do this by the time I leave school. So I think for me, I was like, thanks, kind of thanking my parents for not just letting me explore and kind of be autonomous for a little bit.
I suppose I'm not in design, as everyone knows. The minute I start talking about design, I sound quite stupid. But the only thing I can relate to there is that was I a quarter of the way through 23, 24. I found that it's also quite temporary when you go traveling. So like, lots of people think if I go traveling for a period of time, it will sort itself out. But actually, I think that is something that puts a lot of things on hold, whereas like you can go, people get burnt out, they save a bit of money, early 20s, this is what I did anyway, and you go and get pissed up in Australia for 6 months and then you come back. That was really what it was. But those still same frustrations that you have of your workplace or industry are still kind of there. That is one thing I would say. Obviously, no one's going anywhere at the minute. I think you can go to Portugal now, so congratulations to anyone that's going to Portugal on Monday. But you can't really go. But that was prehistorically. You go, I'll just go traveling for a bit. I'll find myself or whatever, and I'll come back, and the job will be waiting for me or whatever. But actually, I find that as a pathway is something that maybe is equal to the situation you mentioned there, where like you can go and come back, but actually you're still going to feel those kind of frustrations that you talked upon there in terms of the actual day-to-day work that you're doing,
and that debt that you're saddled with as well.
Maybe I think a lot of it has to do with, and I think a lot of people don't think about this, but finding your purpose, right? Because I think a lot of us kind of just live through our late 18s, 19 year, into the early 20s, kind of just free flowing and like, okay, let's see what happens. And there's no structure, and that's okay. But I think as soon as you start realize that your life on this planet is very short, I think the faster you're going to start to figure out what makes you happy. And I'm not here to tell anyone what to do, but I think for me, that just kind of came to me very quickly when I started to realize that school wasn't everything that I thought it was going to be. And then I went into industry, and it was great. I had, satisfaction, but then, that juice started to wear off fairly quickly,
Yeah,
and I wanted more.
Yeah, and to a point where you actually turned down a role at Apple to pursue what it is that you're doing now. I mean, not many people would have the balls to do something like that. So fair play to you for doing that.
Yeah, I don't, that role was it was kind of, again, I think it was part of my strategy of what am I going to do here, right? I'm frustrated with industry and kind of the 9 to 5. Am I going to go here, and is this going to make me happier, or like what they say, like, what's the saying? I think the saying is, I know how the sausage is made.
Oh yeah.
So like you idolize these companies, and then, but idolizing them and working for them are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want to work for someone who you idolize? Because then it's going to turn out to be, you're going to be, you're either going to be really happy, or I don't know. I just don't know.
They always say don't meet your heroes as well, don't they? They always
or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's probably a lot to be said. You touched on identity, and as a young person as well, that's when you're just starting to get a chance to really figure something out. And going to something, one of those companies that has such a strong design ethos, are you going to be able to really learn more about yourself there? I mean, I don't know. I've never been so fortunate as to even get in the door of any of those places. So I don't know. I can't make any assumptions there, but I do think, we've talked a little bit about this before, about there's real value in not chasing just those very specific dreams, but really chasing the opportunity to do the work in the right way. And, when you're a youngster, if you can be around a good team, or if you can be in a small team, you'll learn a lot, and you'll get to really sort of stretch your legs a lot and do lots of different tasks. I always kind of think it's a bit like if you're a car designer. To my mind, if you're a car designer, you're probably not going to get to design a whole car until you're Frank Stephenson, right?
Exactly.
In the meantime, you're going to design handles, and maybe like button layout if you're really good. So it's interesting, but I mean, who apart from you is going to turn down something like that? That just seems like an amazing opportunity. I think I'd be really tempted to go in and go.
Do you think it's also amazing because we're here in the UK and we don't really have companies of that kind of size here? So also we're looking at like, wow, that's the best thing. Whereas,
well, maybe that's a separate thing. But I mean, it's in what is it, Palo Alto? You're in around like the birthplace of mountain biking. You got
right.
surf.
Silicon Valley. You guys are probably like, this guy's an idiot for doing that, but I am gonna say that we are a little privileged here because we do have a lot of these companies left and right. Honestly, I would drive forklifts, at Apple if I really like. That's how much I wanted to work there. You can make me a janitor, but I was thinking long term. How long am I going to stick it out here? Because the job wasn't a design job. It was kind of an entry level into prototyping. It was like a level 1 prototyper and things like that. And for me, I was like, okay, this can be my way in and I can work my way up or whatever. But yeah, like I think at the time I was in a different space. I was very, I had this entrepreneur spirit, and I was like, man, I want to go out and change the world.
Good for you, man.
Good for you.
I really genuinely admire that. I think that's amazing. It's a gamble to move to take anything, but to go, no, that okay, that makes sense. I hear you, but I really want to do this thing over here, and if it comes up in my face, well, I'll have done it, I'll have tried. Off we go. I think that's awesome. I think like if anyone takes any piece of advice as a I say a youngster, but like as a recent graduate, a few years in, take the chance. Whatever the chance is, do it. It might blow up in your face, but you've got fucking years left ahead of you. So just get on with it. I wish I'd been bolder.
That's so true.
I'd taken more chances.
And And you never know, in the future you can work with that company that you admire, because I might have passed up on this opportunity, but the dream is still there. I still dream
Well,
one day.
they're not going to go away anytime soon, are
Yeah,
they?
yeah, and maybe I won't work for them as an industrial designer, but maybe I can work with them on
Yeah,
something else,
yeah.
right? So it's still there. I'm still very excited and optimistic about it.
There's plenty of other people and other companies that need good design, and if they've got a strong design ethos already, great, more power to them. But you know what? The thing I always kind of think about is, and this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you really, have you ever, like the flip side of that, have you ever experienced a product and gone, this is so crap and it could be unbelievable if they would just have thought about this and this? And like, how close have you got to either calling or emailing and going, can I just have 6 weeks in your building and I bet I can make some positive change? Because I promise you I nearly did that today. I just went, you know what? You're just one man.
Yeah. No, I've definitely been there before. I think I kind of have this self-awareness of, oh, I'm not I don't have enough clout for me to step forward, and I'm very conscious of where I'm at as far as the company dynamic. But I've been there before, and I have expressed these concerns in private to some people. And those are very tough conversations, because you look like the bad guy, right? Or you feel really guilty, or feel like you're doing something bad, but yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it feels like a sort of a betrayal of the brotherhood or of the industry to go, well, these guys did a bad job, like whatever,
Yeah.
And that's not what you mean, but it feels like that's kind of an.
Is it a bit like the goalkeepers union in football, Drew, where like if or in soccer, where like if the keeper makes a mistake, the other keeper will never say it's the goalkeeper's fault. They'll always say it's the marketeer's fault. It was the salesperson's fault, or the brief was crap, or it's never actually.
And honestly, I feel like no one's intentionally doing a bad job, but like there are so many conflicting, and often it comes down to like a poorly defined brief, or like a rush to get something out, or maybe a lack of courage to go with the strong idea. I mean, I'm not really thinking of anything too specific at the moment, because any of those things can happen and have an influence that means that a really, really good idea gets delivered really poorly. And maybe like the budget isn't quite there for the machine molding tool or something like that, whatever it might be. But yeah, it's not always a matter of give us half an hour in now.
Yeah. So just obviously we've touched upon like why the purpose of like why you're gonna do this thing. We had an episode once, Hector, where we had 2 agency founders on that just started their own agency. And one of the questions we asked them was, what was the first 100 days like starting up your own design agency? And they'll mention things like, I've got to talk to the accountant, I've got to get bits of kit, I've got to cold outreach people on LinkedIn. Someone that's trying to disrupt design education, can you think back to what the first 100 days were like all those years ago?
Yeah. The first 100 days.
Just trying to think of like how different is it now to what it was back then, and your thoughts. And because now it's like this complete ecosystem, right? But kind of maybe tell us a little bit about those first 100 days and what was going on. And was it just you? Was there a group of you? What were those kind of early days like?
That's a very good question. I don't think I've ever anyone has ever asked me that question. But I think the first 100 days were very exciting. Like we didn't know what we were doing, but I think the excitement level was so big that we could have messed up, we could have failed, and it didn't rock us because we were too excited. It just the overwhelming excitement was too much for failure, and we weren't even thinking about that. So it was very exciting times. There was a lot of things that I was doing as a person individually. Like there was the team was about 6 of us. And I think 90% of probably 75% of the things that needed to get done was me, right? And because I was the salesperson, I was the one going out. Yeah. Exactly. I was the one who was turning belief into action, right? And then I had to trickle that down into the team, because they were also new and they were part of this new venture, and they were looking for someone to lead it and someone to trust, right? To know that this was going to go beyond 100 days. So there was a lot of work, the business aspect of it. There was a lot of work as far as like the vision. We were planning like, okay, what do we want to do for the next 6 months? But then also, what do we want to do for the next year, the next 2 years? So a lot of vision planning and strategizing. Yeah, there was just a lot of work. It felt like a startup where we were kind of everywhere and we were always meeting spontaneously because, things would come up and we were like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? So we were always, we were never stagnant. Like, I don't think we took a break. We were always just on fire. And that kind of pushed us to keep going.
And did you have a day job at this point, or did you, because was you lecturing as well during these early days, or not?
Yeah, I was working full time at a university, and I was doing contracting work, and then I was doing this essentially as well. So I was doing like 3 things at once, and some of the people on the team, they were still students at university, and a lot of them are extremely talented in not only industrial design but also graphic design. So we relied on them to really visualize our branding and our vision for what and these were just students, right? So how do you push a student to elevate the work so that it looks professional and it becomes professional? Yeah.
I think of some of our early days, Drew, where it's funny, isn't it, Hector, where like you see people that come and go, but you kind of need them during like that period. I think of like the young designer Ollie that did our logo for us. It's only it's a logo, but like we needed that to, because if it was me and Drew doing the logo, it wouldn't look as half as good as what it is now. But it's funny how you kind of rely on someone to come in for a little bit, or me and Drew will have a text on a Thursday night, with a boatload of ideas, let's go and do this, and then a week later we might go, oh, we can't do that because we haven't got the time or the money or whatever. But you're constantly just churning out ideas of, okay, we can do that in 6 months time, we'll go and talk to that person. But if you've got enough wheels spinning, eventually things start slotting into place. Was there a particular moment for you, Hector, where things started to slot into place of like, okay, this thing makes sense now? Or I can imagine it might have been a bit, talking to family, I think, I'm just about to start this thing online, it's called Offsite, it's we're doing design education, but they're not going to be going to university. And I suppose now you must be at a place where you can talk very differently about, obviously, over the last couple of years, but just trying to think of like any landmark moments of like, okay, it's really making sense now.
Yeah. So as far as Offsite goes, which is our design education initiative, after we did our first cohort or our first semester, and we completed the 12 weeks and we, accomplished all of that, and all the students attended the courses and everything, I think that's when I was able to breathe, and I was able to be like, wow, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this. In order for something like this to work, everyone has to be all in. The instructors, the mentors, the designers, the sponsors, the students, everyone has to be a part of this moving puzzle. And at the end of those 12 weeks, when it all finished, I was able to really just relax and be like, okay, this pilot program or this beta run, it actually happened. It worked. Yeah. Students are excited about it. There's interest from the outside, right? And I think that's when I was able to be like, we can do this again and again.
Was it a reassurance, going back to see the chat at the start, is it a reassurance that actually you enjoyed it as well, and that actually you didn't go, I've kind of done that now, and now just like when you was a designer, you've designed a toy, and it's a bit like, okay, I've done that now, and now I'm frustrated, I'm bored. But actually, you went through that beta programs like, I want to do that again. That purpose has been verified almost. Is that one of those doubts you had? Oh, I might actually not really
It was a different kind of feeling, because this is something that I created with other people, and I think when it's something that you do, you want to iterate on it, you want to make it better, especially with something like education. You can't just do it once and say, all right, I know it worked, I'm gonna go retire, right? With a product, I guess you can, but also I feel like if you work for someone else, that responsibility isn't there, right? That investment that you have for the company, it might be there, but it's not 100%, right? And when you do something on your own, that investment is 150%. You sleep, you think about it, you shower, you think about it, like all these thoughts are running through your head 24/7, right?
Yeah,
So
you're probably wondering why on earth the screen's changed, but we've got a sponsor, and Ineos Solutions, who are a platinum reseller of Keyshot and PTC, have kindly agreed to sponsor us, which is pretty cool. And
amazing.
Yeah, and Drew, you actually work with these guys. You know what they're all about.
Yeah, I've worked with them a few times over the years. Like I say, I've had them. I've gone to them for my Keyshot supplies, my Creo supplies, and I've even done training with them. And that's something that I'm going to do again shortly.
Nice.
To get my, I trained years ago on the ISDX side of Creo at their very beautiful setting. I just remember the duck ponds and the barn and all of that. But yeah, no, I'm going to do Keyshot training for a day shortly.
Got to get as good as the kids, Drew.
Yeah. There's a lot of mean competition out there now, so I've got all my skills, man.
Yeah, good stuff. And I'm sure you'd agree, but they've been lovely people as well so far. And
Absolutely,
and I'm not a massive people person, but they've been massively lovely. So that's the biggest endorsement I can give them. And they're so nice that they're actually giving us, or not us, but anyone that signs up to the Design Truth Patreon, which is about £6 a month. I mean, we're not breaking the bank here, but anyone that signs up, they're going to get given a £100 voucher to use on Ineos stuff. So maybe your Keyshot needs updating, or your Creo, or you need to rustle up on it, or a bit of training. You need to go and meet Drew for some training. He isn't doing the training, so don't worry about that one. But yeah, they've been very lovely. They're doing the whole Patreon thing, getting involved in Design Truth. We'll let you get back to the podcast now, but we just thought we would let you know. Stay safe.
No, really, it was just sort of around bits of advice for someone in a similar situation.
A friend. I've got this friend.
Yeah. So like obviously Brad and I are doing something around Design Truth, but from my own point of view, what I'm doing, I've got a full-time contract right now that's like a year long, but in terms of like design and all that, that's not that fulfilling. It's good work, and I'm very, very grateful for it, don't get me wrong. But then there's also, on top of that, then there's Design Truth, which I don't do a lot of because Brad handles most of that. But then there's also, parenting, being a good partner. And then there's, eating and sleeping. And then there's the thing, what do I want to do? I'm at this point now where it's been a bit of a topsy-turvy year or so. And it's made me really reflect in the same way that you did. And one of the things I have considered is going into education. One of the things I've considered is getting a fresh education. And that could be a bit of a change.
Maybe you should go to offsite. Maybe we can
talk offline.
Maybe we should get you on one of the next cohorts, Drew.
Well, on that. On that, before I knew about offsite, because I listened to the context episode with, I'm sorry, I always forget the guy's name, but a guy that you had known for a while. I think he'd worked at, maybe was it Motorola or Samsung, and then he's from Australia, and then he set up something similar in Australia to.
Leon, yeah. So he started Auxiliary in Australia.
That's the one, Auxiliary, yeah. So I heard that, and I was like, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that I've been wanting to do. Then I found out more about offsite. What I've always said is, like, if I had a massive lottery win, what I would do is buy a big barn in North Wales and open that up for design workshops and short courses around design skills for for kids who are not going to go to uni. There is like a viable alternative. But the reason I always say if I've got a lottery win is because how on earth do you fund that? And it's as you say, you work 3 other jobs to do it, you fit it in.
Right. I think, and we're actually in the process of doing something in a physical form very soon, because not that the pandemic is ending, but I think things are starting to look better, and we're starting to realize what does offsite look like, in the physical, because right now it's all online. So I'm there with you with that dream. That would be ideal, of course. That'd be awesome. As far as doing a bunch of things at the same time, I think that's something that you start out doing because you yourself as a human being, you're trying to figure out how is all these ventures and personal, and if you have family and kids, how is this all, what does this starting to shape, and how can I manage it? And I think as you kind of go through life and kind of these jobs, you'll start to realize that all of these items align very organically to you as a human, because it's not like you are a designer and then you own an ice cream shop and then you run a real estate empire. Those are 3 different things. You're doing design, and then home, and a lot of that is very close together and in alignment. It's very organic. And when you start to figure out how you can really work multiple things into your life and it all makes sense and it's very organic and it works for you, then you don't even feel like you have multiple jobs. You just feel like you're owning what you're doing, and you're going out there and you're doing different things, but it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm going to start job 1 or I'm going to start job 2. It doesn't feel that at all. But right now you probably feel that way because you're trying to figure things out. And 2-3 years, that was me. For 3 years, I was like, there's all these things and I got to figure out how I'm going to fit this in a 24-hour, schedule. But once you start to figure out where there's overlap and, how to fit in family's time and, all that stuff, you'll start to realize that you actually have more time than ever. That sounds really weird, but you're going to be very efficient.
Well, I've never been accused of that before. No, I appreciate that, man. That's really helpful because honestly, as you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, no, that makes sense.
I'm with you on that, Hector. But equally, I've got to. I'm going to see I think it's my girlfriend's uncle next week or something, and it's gonna be one of those kind of family parties where I'm going to be asked, "What are you doing for work now?" Or, what's the job looking like? And I'm going to have to turn around to him and say, well, I've got this podcast. I've got this thing, and it's like, it's one of those things where I'm totally with you, but put it on a business plan. Sometimes you do look at it some days and go, hey, I've got a map and a podcast.
It's an amazing map.
It's a great map.
I gave it away for free.
Yeah.
Brad, what? Yeah, no, I hear that. And even like saying, I've got this podcast, like a year or so ago, people would have gone, oh my God, that's so cool. It's like, yeah, no, so's 3 of these guys over here, at the table, like everyone's got a podcast now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, even that, you start thinking, probably wouldn't actually mention that. I'll just.
Yeah. So if we kind of fast forward a little bit to offsite today, and I suppose it's more than just offsite, isn't it? I keep saying offsite, but actually it's the conferences that you used to do, Square One, and all these different bits and pieces that are going on. As you can tell, I've kind of prepped for this episode, whereas others I tend to just rock on at the end and have a chat with someone.
There's a lot to get through.
I feel there's a lot to get through, but what's it like now in 2021? We're still in 2021? Like students from all over the world. I'd love to know if you've had any UK designers come on to the cohort and how you found those designers, because I imagine now you must get a real sense of design around the world and what education is like around the world, and maybe can speak with a little bit more authority of like, this is what we're finding designers like in the US, and this is what we're finding designers in like Australia or the Philippines or Korea or the UK. Are you starting to spot any kind of differences or nuances between different cultures and education?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, I think this month, next week, we're going to be celebrating our 5 years in existence as far as advanced design. And I think one of our biggest goals was to really create this really nice ecosystem of education resources. I want to do prototyping. I go and do Ready Set Proto. I want to listen to inspiring designers. I go listen to a podcast like what you guys are doing. I want to, be part of workshops. I go do the conference. There's a lot of moving initiatives. And with Offsite, we do have a lot. We have, I would say maybe 10, maybe 8% of our students are from the UK.
Okay.
And so it's actually very exciting because, we get a lot of students from the Philippines, Australia, the UK, South America, a lot of students from Germany, Italy, Spain, and then China and South Korea,
and they're all together in these cohorts. There's like a huge community feel to the education. Obviously, I watch the videos that come up online and stuff, so I'm not there in the lessons, but there always seems to be this collective togetherness of the people that are on it, and I don't know if that's the case in traditional education, Drew. So you've been through design education, but does it feel like a collective, or does it just feel like a group of people that are just doing the same course?
So when we first started doing this, one of our biggest concerns was, what if all these people don't
get on with each other?
Yeah, they don't mesh well with each other because they're from all different cultures, different parts of the world. But the common language here is design. And yeah, you can be different, but the one common thing that we hang on to is design. And everyone just creates this wonderful community on a global scale, which is great because that's what you want to learn as a student. You want to have a global perspective of what is industrial design. You don't want to have, a local perspective, because unless you're planning on living forever in, and never moving and always working there and dying, where you were born, then I guess that's fine. But you want to go out and change the world with design, you need a global perspective. So the one thing that we noticed with these students who apply to Offsite is design education is pretty much the same around the world.
Okay.
It's
Is that a good thing?
I guess that's a good thing. But the reason why the students are coming to Offsite are for those frustrations that they don't get in traditional academia. And that's where there's those nuances. That's where I think students differ, is they're not getting the most up-to-date information to succeed and to enter into industry.
Right. Okay, I was going to ask, like, what are those frustrations typically?
Yeah, some of them vary from knowing generally how to be a business person, right? Okay. So as a designer, I think we all kind of live in our bubble, but we all know that in order to get a product manufactured and actually make it, there needs to be a lot of different disciplines that you got to go through, right? Business, engineering. A lot of these students, don't know how to take an idea to reality and make it real. A lot of these students don't need.
It's a fundamental, surely.
You would think that a lot of these programs, design for manufacturing, is the foundation for industrial design education, but it's not. A lot of these students don't know about how to manufacture something until 3 or 4 years into their education, and you're like, why is it happening so late? That should be the first class that you take when you go into university, because that without that knowledge, then you're just a concept designer if you don't know how to manufacture.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, in Bournemouth in 2001 when I went, so I graduated 2005, but in Bournemouth there would be something that there was design for manufacture throughout. I mean, that's essentially the origin of the.
That's I think that's a very Bournemouth thing, though, isn't it, rather than a UK thing?
Yeah, but that's the only degree I did. So, so I can speak with any authority about that. You had to design your concept, your idea for usually for injection molding, because that would be something in the brief as well. So you'd have to make allowances for that. but then also you'd have to design it for the prototype that you're going to make manually in the workshop, and that's a different set of considerations, you know. I mean, that's why it surprises me, because that was like from day one.
Yeah. A lot of these students don't have substance in some of the work. A lot of these students lack, a lot of other things like, we have rendering, we have, other things, but we don't teach them, here's how you render. We teach them, how do you utilize this tool to then communicate what you're doing so that your product or your idea continues on down this product cycle, right? Yeah. So it's about utilizing the tools to your advantage, not I'm going to teach you how to render something pretty, because if there's no purpose behind that, then what's the point, right? It has to have substance, right? So
are they also a little bit disillusioned as well, with because if you're hitting this kind of sweet spot of uni to industry, so you're not kind of taking on first year placement people, it's that bit in between, you've just got your bit of paper and now you want to get a job. Do you find that there's that disillusion of, okay, what am I going to do now? What do I actually want to be working on? Because I've found just through the little bits of education stuff that we do, so we'll go and do lectures, Hector, or they'll Ossegum Trent kindly roped us in, didn't they, Drew, so we could review all the final year projects and things like that. So we just get very loosely involved, not to the same extent to what you do. But one of the interesting things I've kind of come to light is that I don't know if unis do the best job of that bit you're talking about. So once they've got the bit of paper, it's almost like, we're done with them now. But I don't know if they're that great at that kind of process of getting them work. I've had a lot of designers are like, what do I do now? I've got this bit of paper. Is that someone's fault, or is that just like a byproduct of the system? Or and I don't know, I might be rambling here, but that's kind of where you guys come in, I suppose. Or it's like, okay, it might be a short, quite intense course, I guess, but you'll know a bit more about yourself as a designer, and you might feel a bit more inspired to go and get a job. And I'm sure you use your contacts as well in landing placements and internships and things like that. So did I just ramble at you for 5 minutes there, or did I even ask a question? I don't know.
A couple of times I felt like, okay, Brad, let him answer now.
No, yeah. You think I've nailed this now by 25 episodes, but no, I haven't.
No, our program has a really big mentorship program. So all of our students get paired up with one industry professional.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then we have a huge job board where students are able to look for opportunities, and a lot of them start to get internships or start to get entry-level positions. And I think the purpose of what we're doing here is, a lot of these students leave offsite and they're excited or they're shocked. They're like, oh my God, like, I grew, my skills were elevated. And some students even come out a little confused because, like you, Brad, you're like, what do I do now? And so what we try to do is, when you are a part of offsite and you leave offsite, that's essentially when our relationship with you begins, because we're going to be there, through your journey forever. And so what we do is we meet with you, we listen to you, and a lot of them are confused. They're like, I don't know what to do now. So we have these conversations with them until we kind of dig deep to figure out what do they want to do and why do they want to do it. And then that's how we're able to help them. Okay, we know someone who does this. We know someone that we can connect you to who can help you kind of find your path. And we've had those conversations. We've built internally a team called the experience team, and their job, essentially, they're kind of like design researchers. Their job is to sit in every class. They're kind of like a fly in the wall, and they're collecting data on how the instructors are teaching and how they're doing. But their job is also to listen to our students. A lot of our students, we give them the freedom to voice their concerns, any frustrations they might have. And we take those concerns and we implement it into our program so that our program is always growing and iterating, as opposed to traditional academia. Students are frustrated and they're pissed off that they got to pay X amount of money, but then they can't voice their opinion to anyone because no one gives a shit. For us, it's like, what's bothering you and how can we help you? Thank you. Let's go implement it. and then we are very open and very transparent with our instructors. Hey, these students want to know if you can change maybe this part of how you're lecturing, or maybe can you make the presentation available prior to your class so that the students are able to process information. So we're all about kind of understanding the student. It's a very student-centered focus, and that's how we're able to accomplish a lot of these conversations.
It's amazing, Drew, because there's nothing like this in the UK, is there really? You think we even find IDSA quite fascinating because it's just so much better than what we've got over here. But
yeah, I want to do it. I want to do something like that over here. I'm massively inspired. I wouldn't know where to begin.
Nope.
Hector, I might, if you're open to it, I'd like to pick your brains a little more, offline and see,
maybe there's I don't know. Yeah, maybe there's something we could do, Drew, with like if there's anyone listening, or we got friends and stuff here in the UK, and maybe I'm sure there are clients of mine and stuff that would be happy to come on and be mentors or something like that. I'm sure there'd be loads of people that are huge advocates. So if you're finding that this 8 to 10% UK thing is growing, we're getting more and more UK designers all the time. Seriously, let us know. I'm sure we can find mentors for them. I think people at Win, I'm sure they'd be happy to give their time to map out the fuel.
I already have like a mentee. Yeah, a mentee. Anyway, the final big question.
What's the question, Drew?
Well, I've got to figure out how I'm gonna word it. Okay, well, it's basically, instead of what was the weirdest thing you worked on, what was the last product? And you don't have to name it or like name the brand, but like what was the last product where you were using it and just went, what the shit, man? This is terrible. I need to pull this thing apart and do it again. What's the one thing that's like, the one thing that comes to mind first that's just an absolutely awful design? This could be great. It's a great idea, or it's a great notion. It has value of, or like it, I'll shut up. But
yeah, okay. So the last thing, or the last product that I've experienced that was maybe a couple of years ago. I was doing work for a furniture company, and they came to me with a big budget, big vision, and this was about a year relationship. And throughout the year, they kept pulling back some of the premium materials that they want to use. Like, oh, can we replace it with this? And at the end of that project, the furniture piece, it was desks and kind of bedroom furniture. The furniture pieces went from being made of real wood to made of IKEA like very exactly cheap wood, and they started to pull back on a lot of things, and it was a shit show because at the end I was so frustrated because I was excited, like, oh, I get to build premium one, like beautiful pieces of furniture that are going to be long lasting if you take care of it. This kind of wood ages like fine wine, and all that stuff, and it ended up being cut up and went through marketing and all this shit, and it ended up being a shit piece of furniture that was like $30 at Target or whatever. And it has really cheap paneling and very, I was so pissed off because this company had an opportunity to do something amazing and really have an impact in sustainability, and they went from having this very positive, to having this completely, so the product went from being an amazing real, like made of real materials, to complete opposite.
Did the price point change or not?
Yes. Yep. The price point, everything changed, all the materials, all the methods of manufacturing, everything changed.
It's interesting because a piece of furniture, I mean, even now, I think to a lot of designers, that's something that's really compelling to want to work on, because it's something that, you can do it in a simple way, but you can also make it as, well, I suppose as complex as you like, but you can design it so it's going to last and be lived in and age in someone's home and become all right, it arrives as one thing, which is very almost identical to the next one that gets made. But over time, it becomes an individual piece, and it's something that you can really be proud of, that you've had some, some input onto. And it's definitely something that I'm working on in the background for now that I'd like to build up. I've got some ideas, but it's interesting you went to furniture because there's so much crap furniture.
Yeah, it's like you have an opportunity to make a real piece of furniture, and they made a furniture that looks like fake wood, and it's just like, it's something that I won't ever put in my portfolio, and something that after this episode, I don't think I'll ever talk about ever again.